Good morning, friends and enemies. Today's video is for the latter. It is for the enemies out there. These are 7 guys that I would gladly tell my arch nemesis to draft in 2025 fantasy football this year. I hope they draft them. I hope they target them, and I hope their team is filled with everybody on this list. I'm hyped up for today's video, so we're tucking our shirts in. Before we get into the list, let's start with rule number 1 of fantasy football. Don't draft injured players, okay? Injury optimism is the number 1 way that we can spot who the fish in our league are, okay? If you are drafting a guy that's going into the year injured, the likelihood of that guy getting re-injured is very high. We cannot predict injuries. I don't know who's going to get hurt this year, and I'm not going to look at injuries of the past and predict that they're going to happen again in the future. It can scare you. It can make you feel weird to draft guys that have burned you in the past from injuries. That's not what I'm talking about as it relates to this list in particular. There are guys that are going to enter the year injured already. Like, we know this already. These are the injury reports. They're not in training camp. They are not playing in preseason. They're questionable into week 1 and week 2 and maybe missing those games. We already know a lot of the guys that are going to be injured. Don't find injuries in fantasy football, because if you've played one single season of fantasy football, you will know that injuries are going to find you. So if you are a beginner, if you are an expert, if you are a mediocre player of fantasy football, the number 1 piece of draft advice I can give you is don't draft already injured players, because if a player is less than 100% health stepping onto the football field, they are way more likely to get hurt. I'm not saying it is a guaranteed fact that they're gonna, but they're way more likely to get hurt than everybody else that is playing at full speed, okay? So with that being said, let us jump into 7 players that your idiot league mates should be drafting over you, that I want my enemies to draft, and many of them come in the form of already being injured. Number 1 is Brandon Aiyuk, coming back from the torn ACL. I don't know when this man's is going to be back. I think he is very, very likely to start the year on the pup list, meaning he will miss at least the first 4 weeks of this season. I also think they got a nice little thing going on in San Francisco where I don't know that they force Brandon Aiyuk back into this superstar level role. And that being said, like, drafting guys freshly off of an ACL tear is without a doubt a losing formula for the most part. I will say, like, Stefon Diggs could fit into this list, but if you've heard anything out of Pat's report, like, he is full go for training camp, 0 limitations at every single practice in full capacity. Again, 2 different things. Like, you can say, oh, Stefon Diggs also off the ACL tear. Only one of these guys is missing all of practice. Only one of these guys is likely to be on the pup list. It's not Diggs. It is Brandon Aiyuk here. So when we think about the ACL tear, that happened midway through the season. We don't know when he's going to be ready to go. He is not practicing yet. He needs to get into full conditioning. We saw him hold out last year, and he got off to an extremely slow start because he wasn't out there. He wasn't in the right conditioning space. He was not getting those valuable reps with Brock Purdy. And you know who is? You got guys like Ricky Pearsall, who's going to pop this year. You got Juwan Jennings, who was the leading target getter last year. You've got George Kittle, who's a beast. And apparently, Christian McCaffrey has not suffered any sort of setbacks going into 2025. So if he is healthy, he takes at least 5 targets per game. So this passing offense will not run through Brandon Aiyuk in 2025. So Brandon Aiyuk, yes, at once he was an elite player. He's probably still an elite route runner, but those 2 do not always translate one to the other. So Brandon Aiyuk would be the first player that I want to see on my idiot league mates team. Going off of that same type of vibe, Chris Godwin out in Tampa Bay, like, we remember what he did. God rest those fantasy points in the beginning of last year. Was like the PPR wide receiver 2 in points per game before breaking his shit last year, all right? And now the pictures of his ankle coming out extremely swollen still. He is not at training camp. He is not practicing. I think there's just as good of a chance that he ends up on the pup list as there is him being ready for week 1. And what makes matters worse is, similar to Brandon Aiyuk and San Fran, there is so much talent in the passing regime going on over there in Tampa Bay. You got Mike Evans, you got Jalen McMillan's cool, but Emeka Egbuka seems like he's going to be the real deal Holyfield out there, first round pick for the Tampa Bay Bucks this year. Godwin, his Vegas projection is at 700.5 receiving yards right now. They're not projecting him to be a smash pick this year either. So Godwin missing all this time. You have a new offensive coordinator once again, so it's like he's not going to have a familiarity with the system, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of the same stuff that they had with Liam Cohen and whatnot, but still, it is another piece of this moving puzzle right now for Chris Godwin. He needs to be dropping down your draft board significantly. Like I said, he had a second surgery that was not planned, was not supposed to happen, which likely means there was some sort of complication in the recovery process, pushes the timeline back. Just not great. He's on the older side of things. Everything in terms of Chris Godwin's reports have been bad vibes out there in Tampa Bay. So Godwin's another dude where he has to drop so significantly down draft boards. And I hate that. That's the one thing is where you draft injured players and you're like, but I got him at a value. It's great. Value doesn't win anything. Players who are on the field and scoring a lot of fantasy points is what wins you fantasy football matchups. So if you ever find yourself drafting an injury-filled player, a guy who's already hurt, and you hear yourself say, oh, but I'm getting him at good value, that should be a red flag. That should be a trigger to you, okay? Don't take that guy. So we've got Aiyuk, we've got Godwin. They are both fades for me in our draft guide, which is live right now. If you want basically the best of our content all just mashed up into a beautiful, easily organized product for you, our draft guide is live right now. It went live August 1st. It's got all of our rankings in PPR, half PPR. You got super flex, you got tight end premium, position. You've got, the top 250. We've even got some defense and kicker ranks for you in there, which I don't always do, but you know what? Shout out to the kickers in 2025. On top of that, we've got the must draft list. We've got our fade list. We've got our round by round favorite targets. We've got our favorite sleepers past round 10 in drafts. All that stuff is in our draft guide live right now on BDGE.co. BDGE.co, the very, very cheapest way for just $10, which is extremely discounted relative to the full price right now. Once you go on BDGE.co, there's a little menu item called partner offers in the top right, which you will see, and that will give you directions on how to get the draft guide for a really, really discounted price. So BDGE.co, partner offers in the top right for a heavy discount for the BDG draft guide. And for those of y'all that have the guide, I would love some feedback. I would love some things you'd like to see added throughout the summer, because that will be updated in real time. That's interactive. You could use it in the middle of your drafts to check off players and stuff like that. But I try to keep on top of all news, notes, and rankings basically every day throughout the summer. So let me know what you would like to see added to the draft guide as the summer progresses. Wide receiver number 3 is Deebo Samuel. I've talked ad nauseum about Deebo and the next guy after him, but Deebo, I just don't like the move to Washington, man. I think it fits on paper with Cliff Kingsbury being a screen type of guy, and I do think it is working in his favor that Terry McLaurin is holding out, because we've seen guys who hold out kind of start the year off a little bit slow. I just think Deebo's kind of lost the juice, man. I think he's lost the sauce. I think he's a little bit thicker than he needs to be right now. I think he'll catch some screens, but at the end of the day, if you play in PPR leagues, which almost everybody does at this point, he doesn't really ever catch more than 55 or 60 passes. He's had the one outlier year in 2021, of course. And then you got to convince yourself that his rushing upside is going to be something huge here, but they already have Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson on the goal line, Ja'Cory, Krosky, Moret, nice little sleeper out there. So I just really don't see Deebo being a massive factor as a wide receiver, because he's not a real separator at the wide receiver position. I think he'll get a lot of screens early on in the year, and they'll force him the ball often, but I don't see that being something that plays itself out over the course of the entire year. And I just don't see the rushing upside that other people do. So Deebo being old, on this 1-year contract, I think San Fran could not wait to get away from Deebo. And anytime a team is telling you that this was our guy, but please take him here, that's a red flag to me. So Deebo, I'm completely off on. The same exact case goes for Cooper Kupp moving from LA to Seattle. I mean, they got rid of Cooper Kupp like that. I mean, the contract he got in Seattle is not really a big one. The Rams easily could have matched it if they wanted to. Instead, they replaced him quickly with Devontae Adams. And when you look at what Cooper Kupp has become, his reception perception chart, 3rd percentile success rate versus man in press. Last year was an abysmal year for Cooper Kupp. He's not going to be force fed. He was still a good PPR player over the last couple of years in the games that he was healthy, even though he's never healthy. But the problem is, so many of those were schemed up motion touches, get him in space because he's sprinting across the line of scrimmage before the play starts, get him the ball at the 2-yard line, let him make things happen. That's just not going to be the case in Seattle. So he's not going to be force-fed targets like he was used to seeing in LA. And they made Puka that guy in LA over the second half of last year, and they clearly see that as his role going forward. Cooper Kupp now becomes a little bit redundant. JSN is a much better slot receiver, just a much better receiver overall. You got to have questions about Seattle's passing offense just to begin with. With Sam Darnold there, probably going to be pressured a lot behind a not great offensive line, and Sam Darnold kind of shrinks when that ends up being the case. But yeah, I actually like Tony Horton out there, man. A rookie making a lot of noise. He's a guy to keep on your sleeper list, and he will be on the sleeper list in the draft guide as well. But Cooper Kupp, I could not be more out on him. The next receiver, I haven't talked about him much, so I'm just going to read off his draft profile in our draft guide, which is something that I wrote up for every fantasy relevant player in there. I want to love Keon Coleman. He's got one of the funniest personalities in the NFL. He's unbelievably likable. Buffalo felt like the perfect landing spot. Early round 2 capital. It's like you're going to be a difference maker in this offense. You get attached to Josh Allen out the gate. He just didn't really flash that he could be that guy as a rookie whatsoever. Like maybe he had 1 or 2 good games and like 1 or 2 good plays in those games, but you're really reaching if you felt differently. One of the other concerns I have with him is like he was used almost exclusively as a boundary receiver, like was never put in motion, was never put in the slot. Like they did not create any layup or easy targets for him. And his separation scores were brutal. Again, referencing Matt Harmon's reception perception website, unbelievably good resource for you guys. His success rate versus man coverage, right there with Cooper Kupp in the 3rd percentile versus press coverage, 8th percentile, zone coverage, 23rd percentile. The guy just could not separate. Like, yes, he makes cool plays down the field. Like, he's really athletic, and if you give him a jump ball, like, he's going to come down with some of them and make some awesome plays. But over the long run, that doesn't lead to consistent longevity and success here. And to make matters worse, in the Bills' final 6 games, including the 3 playoff games, Coleman averaged 16.2 receiving yards per game. Like the rookies, we always talk about second half of the year rookie explosion, Xavier Worthy and BDGE and all those guys. Rookies tend to trend up over the second half of their rookie year. He became an absolute afterthought in this offense. And like I said, I think there's still plenty of like raw talent here, but they need to find creative ways to really get him open. And his ability to win against like real cover corners is a concern. And they have the exact same OC. They got the exact same system. They got all the same things. So I don't know why they would really like be in the mindset to change the creativity that they had with Keon Coleman. They also low-key, it's not really being talked about much, but they brought in Josh Palmer on a 3-year, $29 million deal, who's apparently quickly building rapport with Josh Allen. I think Josh Palmer like kind of profiles similarly to Keon Coleman. And Palmer's obviously not great, doesn't have a ton of upside, but he's been like a really reliable target for Justin Herbert out there in LA. And I could see him taking some of Keon Coleman's targets if they don't see Keon Coleman like progress relatively quickly. And I get it. Listen, like Keon Coleman is not a guy that you got to pay an arm and a leg for. Like his current ADP is, I think, outside of the top 50 wide receivers. He's 115 overall, wide receiver 51. The problem I have with him is look at some of the guys going around. Like the top 50, 55 receivers this year in fantasy are very strong. It's kind of crazy. Right now per ADP, Josh Downs is wide receiver 48. Darnell Mooney is wide receiver 49. Emeka Egbuka is wide receiver 50. Those are the 3 guys going right above him. There's not a chance that if I'm on the clock, I am taking Keon Coleman over any of these guys. Keon, out on. Rashod Bateman, another one that I don't really think I need to tell you guys too much about, but he put up pretty similar numbers, like statistically, year over year, his involvement at least. Like he's still averaging, 3.5 catches per game, 4 targets per game. He just saw a nice touchdown spike come in 2024, coming off of Lamar Jackson's, career best 41 passing touchdowns. So that trickled over into Mark Andrews leading tight ends in touchdowns. Rashod Bateman had a big touchdown year. Overall, Bateman's touchdown numbers are going to drop really, really severely. Like he'll probably be back down at like 4 or 5. Maybe Zay Flowers takes a spike up. Derrick Henry is the guy on the goal line. They also brought in DeAndre Hopkins, which I think could be a dude that takes a decent amount of red zone targets. He's not going to be an every down snap player probably, but I think you draw up some contested catch targets for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins if you bring him in to be a possession receiver. So Bateman's touchdown numbers were fake. And another guy that, again, I don't think people are really drafting much of, but the Marvin Mims love just needs to stop eventually. I get it. He's a good returner. He's not a real NFL receiver. He's not a real NFL receiver. And this is one that I can stand on. And I watched his tape coming out of Oklahoma and hated it. Thought he couldn't run routes. Thought he was fun and explosive and will make plays downfield. He's not a serious route runner, though. And Sean Payton has come to that realization and literally only uses him on 2 types of plays that are screens behind the line of scrimmage and 70-yard shots downfield. I'm good there. I think when we look at Denver, Cortland Sutton, Evan Ingram, I would go as far as saying I think Devon Vele and Pat Bryant are all going to out-target Marvin Mims. Actually throw in RJ Harvey, possibly even J.K. Dobbins there. Probably Harvey more than Dobbins. But if Marvin Mims end up being the 6th most targeted player on this offense, I would be 0% surprised. So stop wasting a late round pick on Marvin Mims because he made a couple splash plays at the end of last year. I'm out on that. Would just absolutely love to see any of those guys on my opponent's roster. And I don't know how I can make this video without saying, like, you show me Kyle Pitts in my Leaguemates starting tight end slot in 2025. That's just barbecue chicken. I am licking my lips. I am tucking a napkin into my shirt. I'm eating with a plastic fork and a steak knife out here. All right, we're getting all sorts of fucking savagery on that. I'm foaming out the mouth right now. Give me Kyle Pitts on one of my fucking idiot league mates' teams, and it's Jehovah's Witness for him, baby. There you have it. All right. Those are, I think, 8, maybe 7, maybe 10. I don't know. I just fucking start yapping and it doesn't end until I can't breathe anymore. But that is a list of players that I am telling all of my enemies this summer. All right. Mason Dodd, you run up to me on the streets and it's Kyle Pitts propaganda till it's backwards. Hit the button that looks like this if you enjoyed. But most importantly, if you want to support the brand and you want to support yourself in your fantasy drafts, go to bdge.co and cop the draft guide. All right. It went live August 1st. It'll be updated throughout the entire summer. And make sure for the heavily discounted price, you check out our partner offers page on the website. I love y'all. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you tomorrow. Smooches.